Humanity experienced one of the darkest moments in history in 1994. In the period of 100 days, the Hutus committed horrendous crimes against the Tutsis in Rwanda, which resulted in 1 million people killed, 500,000 women raped, 400,000 children made orphans. The rate of killings in the first 2 months of the Rwandan genocide was 5 times higher than during the Holocaust in Nazi Germany. The Rwandan genocide was the biggest occurrence of a mass murder post-World War II and a direct violation of the Genocide Convention from 1948. The crimes happened right before the eyes of the United Nations. Rwanda is the most densely populated African country, dominated by mountains, lakes, and savanna. We can split the people of Rwanda into 3 main ethnic groups: the Hutu, the Tutsi, and the TWA. The Hutu group is the biggest, they were farmers. The Tutsi group is the second largest, they were shepherds. The TWA group is the smallest, they are pygmies, who used to live in the forest. About 85% of Rwandans are Hutus, but the Tutsi minority has long dominated the country. Germany took Rwanda as a colony in 1884. Belgium, already owning, and looting, neighboring Congo, used the word war as a pretext to occupy Rwanda in 1916. The colonizers used the frictions between the Hutus and the Tutsis to their advantage. They encouraged division between the Hutus and the Tutsis by favoring the Tutsis. The Belgians even introduced identity cards, which had information about ethnicity. The identity cards labeled the Rwandese people as a Hutu, a Tutsi, a TWA, or a naturalized. There was no way to switch among the ethnicity groups, not even for the wealthy Rwandese. Thus the ethnicity groups represented also social classes, with the Tutsis being the ruling class. In 1959, the Hutus revolted, and 3 years later they won independence from the colonizers. The Hutus, longing for revenge after decades of oppression, massacred thousands of Tutsis. The Rwandan population increased from 1.6 million people in 1934 to 7.1 million in 1989. The population growth further increased tensions between the Hutus and the Tutsis. In 1990, the Rwandan Patriotic Front, RFP, a pro-Tutsi organization, led by Paul Kagame, started a civil war in Rwanda. The next 3 years were a mixture of the sporadic violence and the ceasefire periods. The right wing of the Hutu ruling class in Rwanda began meticulous preparations for a series of events that would shock the world. They spread racist propaganda against the Tutsis. The civilians received rifles, grenades, and machetes. Under the pretext of self-defense, youth militias were trained on how to fight. On the 6th of April 1994, the presidential airplane, carrying the presidents of Rwanda and of Burundi, was shot down. Everyone on board died. The Hutu government accused the Tutsis of the assassination of the President Juvenal Habyarimana. A few hours later, the military killed the Prime Minister of Rwanda and other moderate Hutu politicians. The next day, the killing of Tutsis and moderate Hutus began. Armed men blocked the roads, and every person passing by had to show an identity card. If your card said you were a Tutsi, the police shot you immediately. The soldiers, carrying lists with addresses and names of the Tutsis, went from house to house, killing every Tutsi they could find. In rural areas, the Hutus and the Tutsis lived next to each other for generations. The government encouraged the Hutus to kill the Tutsis and take the land of the ones they killed. The Tutsis often fled into the churches for the protection. The Hutu militias waited for the Tutsis to gather inside the church and then killed them with machetes, grenades, or even burned them alive. The official radio station was playing music so that militiamen could dance while killing the Tutsis. The Hutu militia gang-raped women and mutilated their genitals. They even created rape squads, groups of men with AIDS, who raped the Tutsi women and infected them with HIV. The international community led by Belgium, United States, and France knew what was happening in Rwanda. They could intervene and stop the genocide, but there was a lack of political will to act. On the 7th of April, the first day of the genocide, the Hutus tortured and killed 10 Belgian soldiers. Belgium withdrew its troops to avoid further casualties. The United States was reluctant to get involved in Africa after a disaster in Somalia in October 1993. During the Battle of Mogadishu, the Somalis killed 19 American soldiers. France sided with the Hutu government because they wanted to keep the influence over the region. The French supported the Hutus for the first 2 months of the genocide by supplying weapons and training personnel. The United Nations, UN, had Peace Corps in Rwanda. After the withdrawal of the Belgians, the Peace Corps didn't have enough manpower and weapons to act. They were bystanders. A relief contingent of the 5,500 UN troops arrived only in October 1994. The Rwandan genocide stopped and the Rwandan Patriotic Front defeated government forces on the 15th of July 1994. Over 2,000,000 Hutus fled from Rwanda to escape the Tutsi retaliation. Paul Kagame and the Rwandan Patriotic Front took the power and are ruling Rwanda today. In the years after the genocide, they often invaded the neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo to fight the Hutu rebels. In 2003, Rwanda got a new constitution that eliminated any reference to ethnicity. The Rwandan identity cards no longer contain any information about ethnic groups.